สร้างอนาคตให้กับพ่อแม่พี่น้องลูกหลานของเราด้วยกันนะครับวันนี้มีประชาธิปไตยมาขายพ่อแม่พี่น้องประชาชน
Welcome to Talking Politics, a special interview program of Thai PBS World that we hope will help you understand and make sense of what goes on in the Thai political scene in the context of the upcoming election. And my guest today is Kun Parit Wacharasindhu, who is the policy campaign manager of Kao Klai or Move Forward Party, one of the parties that are expected to have a very strong showing in the upcoming election. So welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so Kun Parit, you are back on the campaign trail once again, but now under a different banner, right? So up to this day, do you still have to explain yourself to your constituents why you are no longer with the Democrat and you are now with the new party?
I think I have explained myself consistently over the past few years, both kind of the reasons why I decided to resign from the Democrat Party about almost 4 years ago, when they decided to join with the current coalition government, which went against what they had promised at the election, and also what I believe to be against my ideology in terms of supporting a fair set of rules, set of democratic rules, which I felt that by joining a coalition led by Parit Wacharasindhu, led by General Prayut, was a decision that the Democrat took, which meant that it was trying to justify or approve of the undemocratic rules that have been written and undemocratic practices that were implemented by Parit Wacharasindhu and the people involved with the party. So I think I explained myself very clearly when I resigned 4 years ago. And when I decided to join officially with Move Forward Party about a year ago, also explained that my main decision for joining Move Forward Party was that my ideology and the party's ideology was aligned. Or explain simply, our vision of what we want to see in Thailand, of what the future of Thailand should be like, are the same.
Talking about Move Forward Party, vote Move Forward and Thailand will never be the same again. Yeah. I mean, that's roughly a translation of your Thai slogan, right? Kao Klai
ประเทศไทยไม่เหมือนเดิม
ประเทศไทยเหมือนเดิมใช่ไหมครับ So how different will Thailand be in your vision?
Yeah, so I think, as you correctly said, our slogan is vote, move forward, and Thailand will never be the same again. I think it stems from the fact that we see that a lot of problems that we are facing in this country right now are actually problems that we have been facing for many years, whether it's regarding our crisis on economic competitiveness, whether it's regarding the issue of inequality that is rising, whether it's the lack of education reform, whether it's issues of corruption. So what we believe is that since we've been facing the same problem for so many years, what that is telling us is that in order to fix these problems, we cannot rely on solutions that have been tried and tested in the past. But what we need are new solutions to take Thailand to a place where it's never been before. And I think that's kind of the origin of why we came up with the slogan, vote, move forward, and Thailand will never be the same again. If I go into a bit more specifics, I think Move Forward Party, as a party, we see that there are 3 key challenges that are facing Thailand right now. The first crisis or the first challenge is a crisis of democracy. I don't think we can fully say that we are living in a full democratic regime when we are still under a constitution that originated from the military coup, a constitution that was passed through a referendum that was neither free nor fair, a constitution that has a lot of undemocratic content. The second crisis that we are facing is a crisis of inequality, which is an issue that Thailand has faced for many years. But we believe that if we do nothing, the issue of inequality is just going to worsen, whether it's a trend regarding aging society, whether it's a trend regarding global warming, whether it's a trend regarding technology coming to replace certain jobs. All these trends will exacerbate the issue of inequality that we are facing. And then the third crisis that we are facing, I think, is a crisis of economic competitiveness. We are seeing that Thailand has been growing much more slowly compared to our neighboring countries. We have seen necessary reforms like education reform, state reform has been happening at a very slow pace or very little progress. Right? So I think these are the 3 key challenges that we are facing. And I think our solution to solve each crisis are solutions that have never been tried and tested before. So for example, when we talk about solving the issue of the crisis of democracy, What we are proposing are things like the drafting of a new constitution that is drafted by a constitution drafting assembly that is fully elected. Thailand has never seen that before, but we believe that that is the first step towards guaranteeing a full democracy in Thailand. What we are proposing is promoting democracy at all levels of government. So we launch a policy that we should have elected governors in all provinces, all 77 provinces in Thailand, rather than the current system where the governor is still appointed by the central government.
Decentralization of power.
Yes. And when we talk about solving issue of inequality, I think what we are proposing is expanding our welfare state to a size that has never been seen before. And that will, of course, require making certain budget cuts in other areas that are not necessary, and diverting, reallocating those resources to expand our welfare state to ensure that people, from when they are born till they leave this world, have a good quality of life. And then I think finally on the competitiveness, what we are proposing are drastic measures such as education reform, where we want to rewrite the new curriculum. We are proposing state reform, where we want to tackle issues of corruption by creating a transparent government that opens all data of how the taxpayers' money is spent, so that people can investigate every single baht. Right? So these are all measures that I've talked about are measures that have never been tried and tested before, or at least never have been implemented at a scale that we are proposing.
So what you just mentioned are just long-term platforms, right? But it looks like your immediate stated goal, one of the goals anyway, is to put an end to military intervention, a domination of Thai politics. And more specifically, you want to get rid of all these, first of all, the General Parit Wacharasindhu and all his comrades in arms, right? So what makes you think that by removing these people, you will put an end to military intervention in Thai politics?
So I think putting an end to, firstly I have to clarify that all our policies, whether it's regarding solving the issue of democracy, whether it's regarding expanding our welfare state, whether it's regarding making the necessary reforms to uplift our competitiveness, they're all policies that can be done across the time frame of 4 years, which is the agenda of a government, or the term limit, right? And there are some areas which we can do in the first 100 days. So for example, things like decentralization. What we are proposing is that in the first 100 days, we will have a referendum to ask people across the country whether they agree with having elected mayors in all provinces or not. Things like solving corruption. What we can do in the first 100 days are things like opening data, government data for people across the country, or even things like education reform. Of course, rewriting the curriculum may take 1 year, but what we can do in the first 100 years is guaranteeing that every school will be safe and there will be no violation of student rights in all schools. Right? So every policy, we have a clear time frame. Everything can be done in 4 years. There are certain things that can be done in the first 100 days. Now back to your question on...
What's the time frame of getting rid of the military intervention?
So I think back to your question of military intervention, I think of course that will require reforms that go beyond focusing on certain personnel, right? I think what we said as a starting point is that move forward will not join any coalition government that involve Palang Pracharat Party or Rwam Thai Sang Chat Party, because both parties are led or have the prime minister candidate who were involved with the military coup 8 years ago.
And this is non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Because we believe, our mission is to return the country to a full democracy, and we don't believe that these two parties, given that they're headed by the two people who were directly involved with the military coup, directly involved with writing of a new constitution, or the 2017 constitution that extended their powers via undemocratic practices. We don't believe that these two parties will be reliable or will be on board with us when we say we want to return the country to a full democracy. So I think that's the first step, is that we will not join coalition government with these two parties.
That means that under no circumstances would the party would sit down with these people and do some negotiations? No circumstances.
Yep, this is a non-negotiable, because we believe that our mission and their mission are very different. And we let the people decide via the ballot box which future they want to see in this country. But beyond that, I think to prevent military intervention, I think there are two things that need to be done, and what we are planning to do across the span of our 4-year term. The first one is, I think we need to rewrite the constitution, because we have to admit that right now in the current constitution there are certain articles that are put in place to try and extend military power, or at least the powers that are related to these military or former military generals that staged the coup. Right? There are mechanics like the senators, who are currently 250-member Senate, are all appointed by the military coup a few years ago, but they have wide-ranging powers, whether it's the power to choose who becomes prime minister, whether it's the power to vote on reform bills, whether it's the power to even veto any constitutional change. There are also mechanics like the Constitutional Court or independent organizations like the Election Commission who are expected to be neutral in their practices. But in reality, how they were appointed is monopolized by the 250 senators who were appointed by the military regime, which means that the appointment process is monopolized by one side of the political spectrum. So we do not expect that they can act in a fully neutral way. And there is also the mechanic of the 20-year national strategy, which is a loophole which can result in an elected government being forced out of office simply because their policies are not in line with the 20-year national strategy. So the first thing that we need to do to prevent military intervention is that we need to rewrite a new constitution that is fully democratic. And apart from removing these mechanics that were put in place by the military regime, we also need to be more direct and clear in terms of writing certain articles in that constitution to prevent any loopholes for military coups. For example, writing in the constitution to give people the right to oppose or resist any military coup. For example, writing a clear article in the constitution that says that no political institution such as the courts can verify or approve a military coup. These are things that we can try and put in to lock those measures. But that alone is not enough. We also need to do a second thing, which is to reform the military. So apart from writing, as perfect as a constitution can be or as democratic as a constitution can be, we also need to reform the military to make sure that they don't have power over the civilian government. How do we ensure that the military is under civilian control? To put it in concrete terms, if we look at how the Ministry of Defense currently operates, there are certain mechanics that allow for the military to still have power over the elected minister. For example, things like Sapa Kalahom or the military parliament, which consists of mainly military personnel, and they have power over the Minister of Defense in terms of how the policy related to the military. So Move Forward's proposal is also to reform the military and remove those special mechanics and ensure that the military is under civilian control. I think if we do these two things, rewrite a new constitution that is democratic and reform the military, that will be a necessary step or two necessary steps to prevent military intervention in the future.
So that would mean that you will be on a collision course with the military, which we have to admit that is part of the powers that be that has been sort of reigning over the country for decades. Are you prepared for that kind of a situation?
I think we have to be clear that we are on a collision course with the concept of the military intervening in politics. We are not against soldiers or people in the military who want to perform their duties as soldiers or as the military in protecting the security of our citizens. So I think what we are proposing, I believe, will also get the support of a lot of professional soldiers who want to see the military basically do not intervene, do not encroach in the realm of politics and act as professional military. So in that sense, I don't think it's fair to say that we are on a collision course with everyone in the army, but I think we are on a collision course with the idea of the military intervening in politics.
Those who have abused the establishment. Right?
Yes, and I think a lot of the proposals that we are proposing to military reform, I believe will also help to strengthen our military in the mission to protect the security of our citizens. So for example, one of our proposals to reform the military is to reduce the size of the military, because what we have seen over the past decades is that the main threat to our security is no longer threats that can be defended by just personnel alone, but there are new threats to our security that need to be defended in other measures. And we've seen that even the countries with the most powerful militaries in the world have been decreasing the size of their army, or at least the ratio of soldier to population has been decreasing over the past 20 years, whereas in Thailand it's been increasing. So it's been going against the global trend. So what we are proposing is to reduce the size of the military or the number of personnel down by 30 to 40%. That will allow for us to save a certain amount of budget that can be reallocated for other more meaningful purposes. So I think, for example, here is an example of a military reform that I believe will be in the benefit of the military in terms of their mission of protecting the security of the citizens.
But you are also pushing for an end to military conscription, right? And this certainly strikes the right chord among young people, but not so among older generation of people who are more concerned about national security. So how will you do this? I mean, ending the conscription. What is the time frame for that?
Yeah. So again, I reiterate that our proposal to abolish conscription, I don't believe goes against people necessary in the army, and I believe there are people in the army who support this proposal. And I think we have to reiterate to the people who are concerned with this policy is that abolishing conscription does not come at the expense of losing our security. The reason we have conscription right now is because each year the army will demand a certain number of military personnel to become privates, or in Thai, Pol Tahan. Roughly over the past few years, somewhere around 100,000 people. Now, when they ask or demand 100,000 people, and let's say only 40,000 people volunteer, they then try to force another 60,000 people amongst the Thai population to become soldiers. Now, what we are proposing is that, number one, we are questioning whether the army really needs 100,000 people per year to defend the country. Because what we are seeing every year is soldiers or privates being used for purposes that do not seem to be related to protecting our security. For example, being private assistance to certain military generals, or even certain tasks that we believe can be reduced. So in that sense, we believe the demand for 100,000 soldiers per year is too high. And if we can reduce that down, then what we can do is improve the welfare services, ensure the safety of soldiers in the camps. That will incentivize people to volunteer more. And that will mean that we will have enough people to serve the needs to defend the country without requiring conscription. Now, in terms of time frame, what we will do is we will have to amend the law, which is พรบ รับราชการทหาร or a law related to military service, which was written in 2497. So in Thai calendar year 2497 is for our international audience is a 70-year-old law that was put in place to have this conscription regime. So what we are proposing is to amend that law, and that can be done within the time frame of 1 year. So if Move Forward is in government, this April will be the last time we have this conscription. And next year, there will be no more drafting of these red and black cards and no more conscription.
You yourself did the military service, right?
Correct.
Did you find it useful?
So, I mean, I had to do it because I studied abroad when I was in secondary school, so I didn't enroll in...
Unwillingly?
I didn't enroll in raw door. So I had two choices. One is that I take my chance and then pick a card. The other is just to volunteer and serve 6 months. So I decided to volunteer because I felt it was a process for me to gather more information about this conscription. It allowed me to, I guess, be more holistic in terms of coming up with this proposal to abolish conscription. So in that sense...
What was it negative or positive, your experience in...
I mean, if there was no conscription, I would not have signed up, right? I mean, respectfully, I have my dreams in pursuing other careers other than being a soldier. But because the law was in place, I decided to volunteer for 6 months and then gather as much information as possible to make my policy proposal as well-rounded as it can be. Yep.
Yours is one of the very few Thai political parties that have gained serious attention of foreign media. For example, just recently, the Straits Times Singapore had a news article about your party. And this was the headline of the article. It said, Thai opposition move forward, sticks to election campaign to amend law on insulting monarchy. And then down in the story, there's a sentence that says that described Move Forward as being synonymous with anti-establishment crusade. Are you happy with this kind of description, narrative?
So I think I can, of course, clarify, right? I think the first sentence regarding amending the law, insulting monarchy. I think of course, it's talking about our proposal to amend Article 112. Yeah. Now, Article 112 is basically a law regarding defamation of the monarchy, right? And what we are proposing is that there are certain issues regarding that law that should be amended. If I go into specifics, I think there are three key issues. The first issue is that even though the law talks about defamations and insulting the monarchy, what we've seen in practice is that this law has been used against actions of people that by common sense do not constitute defamations or insults. So for example, there was a person a few years ago that was convicted of Article 112 for sharing a BBC News article that was neither defamatory or contains insults, right? So I think that's a clear example of a problem that needs to be amended to ensure that we protect free speech and ensure that this law is only applied for case of defamations and insults. The second aspect that we want to amend is the severity of the punishment and the penalty. Right now, the penalty for defamations of the monarchy in Thailand by Article 112 is 3 to 15-year imprisonment, which is equal to unintentionally killing a person. So for us, compared to when we compare to penalties of similar laws in other countries under a democratic regime with a constitutional monarchy, we see that 3 to 15 years in prison is very much many times higher than global standard. So what we are proposing is reducing that to 0 to 1 year imprisonment. And then the third and final issue regarding Article 112 is who has the right to initiate a process for filing a complaint. Right now, under the current Article 112, anyone can file a complaint against anyone. And we see that this has led to it being used as a political weapon by certain people against people on the opposite side of the political spectrum, or even sometimes used to protect a person's own corruption allegations, right? So you might put the institutions and the monarchy's name across a certain project to create an environment of fear that prevent people from investigating the project. And then, if suddenly it's exposed and then there are corruption cases that are seen in those projects, the people who are affected is actually the monarchy whose name is affected, even though they're not involved with this project. So these are three key issues that we see that is problematic. So, we are very straightforward in saying that, therefore, we should amend the law on these three areas to ensure that we, on the one hand, have a law regarding defamation against the monarch, but on the other hand, the law is in line with democratic standards and actually helps improve the relationship between the people of this country and the monarchy as well.
Am I right to observe that you have been very cautious in talking about this particular issue? You don't talk about it so openly on your stage in your campaign trail, right?
I think we have been consistent and public actually in talking about this proposal. But in every interview, when we are asked this issue, we always give a direct and consistent response. To be fair, right now, Move Forward Party has about 300 policies that we have published on our website, and you can go and read on all these policies. So which one we choose to speak at which venue may be different, but we give equal importance to all these 300 policies. And one of the 300 policies is, of course, to amend Article 112. So I would have to respectfully disagree, and I think we have been consistent and public and straightforward in the way we have talked about this.
What about the narrative that Move Forward is anti-establishment, as I point out in this news article, and which is also similar to observations by many other people that see Move Forward as being too radical?
Okay. Firstly, I don't know what establishment in this context particularly means, but I think what it is referring to is that we are proposing reforms to a lot of political institutions that we believe are in need of reform. So, for example, we are proposing drastic civil service reform to ensure that the state is more transparent in the way it handles or in the way it operates. That all government data has to be open to citizens to be able to investigate. We are initiating drafting of a law to protect whistleblowers or civil servants or people who have seen certain corruption happening in front of their eyes, but in the past have been afraid that if they were to expose those corruption cases, that they might, their safety and their career progression might be at risk. So we are, proposing a law to protect those people. We are proposing drastic state reform regarding decentralization, right? Not just elected mayors across all provinces, but we are also proposing reforms or changes to how the budget is allocated. Right now, if we pay 100 baht in tax, 80 baht goes to the central government, and only 20 baht goes to the local governments across the country. Whereas if we see countries like Japan, it's split about 60-40 or close to 50-50. So in that sense, if by establishment you mean the practices of current political institutions, then of course we are proposing reforms to that. Right? Now to your other point about are we too radical? Yeah. I think I have to insist that our agenda, all these 300 policies that we've been talking about, are very much in line with global standards. They're not in any way radical. I would actually even go so far as to say that any proposal to continue to run the country as it has been over the past few years is actually, in fact, more radical than what we are proposing. If you, let's say, ask a person from the US, what is more radical between, having a prime minister that is selected by elected MPs, or having a prime minister that is selected by 500 elected MPs together with 250 military appointed senators. I think they will say that the latter is more radical. If you ask a person in Japan, what is more radical between having all 77 provinces run by elected governors, or having them all run by all but one, or apart from Bangkok being run by governors appointed by the central government? I think they would say that the latter is more extreme. If you ask a person, say, in the UK, what is more radical between a proposal by Move Forward Party to say that independent bodies like Electoral Commission should be have an appointment process that is fair and diverse, versus the current constitution that says that anyone who becomes a committee member of the Electoral Commission has to be appointed by the military appointed senator. I would say that the latter is more extreme. So I think it depends what you use as a baseline. But if we compare ourselves to global standards, I think what we are proposing is in line with global standards. And any proposal to continue to run the country as it has been is in fact a very radical proposal.
What happens in Thailand should be more described as radically backward.
I like that phrase. I might borrow it.
All right. So in the last election, the Move Forward Party, in previous life, the Future Forward Party, right, caught everyone by surprise with the very impressive performance. So you expect to make an even bigger surprise this time around?
When you say surprise, it depends on what people's expectations are.
That's right.
I think I don't want to spend too much time making predictions. I think what we are trying to do every single second from now until the election is to try and communicate as clearly as possible what we have in plan for the country, what are the policies we want to implement, what are the changes we want to create in this country, and try and give as much confidence to the people that we, as a party, can deliver these changes. I think what I've learned over the past, very limited experience in politics, I think two things that are vital. Number one is what we learn is that every single second of the next 4 years in government is very crucial. And if we are, given the opportunity by the people to be in government, we want to use every single second to put as much value to it as possible. We have learned, I think, as Future Forward Party, that some of the laws that we propose, even though we finished drafting it in the second year of government and we submitted to Parliament, there is a lot of friction in Parliament, which meant that these laws were not debated or discussed in Parliament in time across the 4-year spectrum. So this time, our learning from that is that therefore we have to prepare everything from day one. So apart from the 300 policies, we also prepared about 40 laws, or drafts of about 40 laws expanding across multiple areas that we plan to submit on the first day of Parliament to ensure that we use every single second of the next 4 years as wisely and as valuable as possible. And the second thing that I learned is that some of the difficult changes, some of the difficult reforms that we are proposing can only be successful if it receives public backing. So we see that in the past, we saw, for example, one of Future Forward's law regarding liberalizing the liquor market and demonopolizing the liquor market. In the end, it narrowly was defeated by 2 votes. But the reason it got that far is because there's a lot of public support backing that law. So in that sense, we have what you may have seen on the election campaign trail is that Move Forward Party has been very rigorous and consistent in terms of laying out all the very detailed proposals and detailed changes, all these 300 policies that we want to do. Some people question why we have to announce so many policies. But I think for us, what we see is that this is a promise that we are making to the electorate, that this is our 4-year agenda. And if you believe that these are the necessary reforms that need to be made in this country, then back us with your votes. And the number of votes we get will be an indicator of how much there is public backing for these.
Most people know Kun Pita Limcharoenrat, your party leader and the candidate for Prime Minister, from what they see and hear from the media, right? And also through his performance in the House debate. Very eloquent speaker, there's no question about it. But his leadership quality is something, an unknown quality. So what would he be like as a leader? What kind of leader would he be?
So we as Move Forward Party are very confident that Kun Pita will make a very good Prime Minister. And we, as a party, we believe that he is the best choice to lead the country right now. The reason we say that is because we know that the world is fast changing. So what we need is a leader who is able to catch up with what is going on, not just in Thailand, but across the rest of the world as well, and be able to catch up with all the trends that are happening at a fast pace. I believe that Kun Pitha's leadership quality that is very important is the ability to bridge, I think, three aspects. Number one is he's able to bridge between economic and political issues. And we know that the changes that needed to be made in this country have to span across the three crises that I mentioned, the crisis of democracy, crisis of inequality, crisis of competitiveness. Therefore, we need a leader who is able to understand a broad set of issues that span across both economic policies, political policies, and social policies. And I think Kun Pitha has that breadth. The second aspect, or the second bridge that is important, is to bridge between generations. Because we know that with the world that is fast changing, different generations may have different preferences, may have different norms, different beliefs. And as a government, we have to govern for all generations. So having a leader who is able to connect, on the one hand, is able to understand the values of the younger generations, what they want to see, but also in a way, also empathize with what the older generations may believe in, is important. And the third bridge, I think, is bridging Thailand and the rest of the world, right? And I think Kun Pitha's ability to catch up with global trends, not just national trends, I think will be valuable for his role in terms of connecting Thailand to the rest of the world. Because we see that a lot of issues right now that the Thai people are facing are issues that cannot be solved by Thailand alone, but need to be solved by gathering international collaboration as well. So for example, as we are currently speaking, a lot of people in Thailand are faced with PM 2.5 or the issue of haze, which is actually transboundary. The origins of the haze partially comes from neighboring countries as well. So using the international platform to create that collaboration to reduce agricultural burning in other countries and prevent transboundary haze is something. It's a clear agenda that requires someone who can connect Thailand to the rest of the world. So I think in that sense, Kun Pitha's quality as a bridge between economic and political issues, a bridge between older and younger generations, and a bridge between Thailand and the rest of the world will be very crucial for the next 4 years.
And talking about the Move Forward Party, I think most people know about the party through personalities of the party, right? But the inner working of the party is something quite new to most people. And being a young party whose leadership comprises young, upcoming, progressive thinking politicians, people expect the party to be transparent, open, and inclusive in its decision-making process. But as you know, that early this year there was an incident. There was a breakaway of a small group of people in the party, which accused the leadership of monopolizing the decision-making power. So, what is the real situation in the party there? Is it something that these people accuse the party of being? And you remember, the leader of the breakaway group even used the word Parit Bureau, to describe the leadership of the party. We know that Parit Bureau is the executive apparatus of Communist Party, which I'm sure Move Forward Party is not.
Yeah, so we of course try to listen to all criticisms and allegations, and what we think are useful criticisms, we try and incorporate and improve the way we manage internally. So I think, of course, we've sadly seen a lot of members decide to leave the party. I think it's common in politics for people to feel that maybe this party may not be fully aligned with their personal ideology and decide to leave, or for other reasons as well. I think we take those criticisms fully, and we try to improve in the way we handle things. But I think we insist that in the past we have been trying to manage the party in a way that is as transparent, as inclusive, as participatory as possible. But any shortage that certain members still feel, I think we will take those seriously and try to improve the way we handle things.
And there's no such thing as Parit Bureau in the
No,
party.
of course the leadership is the management committee, กรรมการบริหารพรรค so they make the key decisions. I'm not part of that, by the way. I'm not part of the management committee as well. But I think speaking as a member and as a working team member of the party, I think we, as a group, take every feedback, whether it's positive or negative, fully, and we try to make sure that we improve the way we handle things. But what I can comment is on how we design our policies, because that's an area of work that I am directly involved in. We have a very inclusive and participatory nature in the way we design our policies. in concrete terms, what we have done over the past 2-3 years, we set up an organization called Think Forward Center, which acts as almost like a think tank to the party. It's headed by Professor Detrat Sukkamnert, who has been basically in charge of analyzing the country's problems and trying to come up with solutions over the past 2 or 3 years. And Think Forward Center has been very active in terms of traveling around the country to hear from all stakeholders across all issues.
All right. So thank you very much, and all the best to you and your party.
Yes, thank you very much.